All right, so welcome back. We're going to actually start doing the modeling now. You make sure you need to know if you're doing a custom display case, you need to know the height, width, and depth of the openings that you want to do, as well as the number of openings across and the number up that you want. If you haven't watched that first video, if you're doing a custom display case, go watch that first video. If you're making a motor storage container for me, go ahead and stick with this and just do whatever numbers I do. All right, let's get started. So first thing we want to do is just save our file so we don't lose our work halfway through. I'm going to call this, because I'm making it for the Vex Motors, Vex Motor Storage. If you're doing a custom display case, name it whatever you'd like. And then I'm putting it in a Vex Storage project, and I'm just going to hit save. Put yours where you want to put it. I'm fine with whatever you want to do with that. All right, so to model this, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the back of the display case, and then we're going to model the sides and all the vertical inside pieces, and then we'll model the top and all the horizontal inside pieces, and then we'll flatten it out, get cut lines, send it to laser, and just assemble. So let's get started. So we're going to click here, and we're going to click on the front face here because we're going to create the back first. So we want to be looking straight on at it. And to do this, I'm going to grab, well, first, before I do anything else, I'm going to create some parameters. So I'm going to do a modify and change parameters. I'm going to add a new user parameter, and this one I'm going to call thickness. And this is where you need to figure out how thick the plywood is you're using. So my advice is to go grab 2 or 3 pieces or 4 or 5 pieces of plywood, squeeze them together, so like lay them flat on top of each other like this, and then squeeze them with a hand clamp, and then use a caliper to measure how thick those 4 or 5 pieces are. Divide that number by the number of pieces to find the thickness of one piece. And you're going to put that number in here. Now remember, the number on your caliper is in millimeters. So if you're going to use that number, make sure you come down here and change it to millimeters. Or you can convert that number into centimeters. I'm going to leave it, I'm going to put mine in millimeters. And I know that mine, I measured already, is 2.7 millimeters thick. So I'm going to leave mine like that. And then comment is material thickness. This is the point, no matter what you're doing, you need to actually measure the plywood we have on hand. A lot of times it's off by enough to where it won't fit together. So don't just use 2.7, go measure it, no matter who you are. Everyone should be having their own number here. If you need help figuring out how to measure it, just ask me and I will help you. All right, click OK. Now my next user parameter, I need to do the width of the opening. So I'm going to call this one width. And down here, I'm going to call, I'm on mine, my width was 5.75 centimeters. So make sure it says centimeters. And then I'm going to call this left to right of opening. So it's really specific what width means to me. For me, it means left to right. So I'm going to say, okay. And now I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to call this one height. Mine is 3.25 centimeters. Again, if you're making motors, these numbers you're using are same as mine. And then here, this is going to be the top to bottom of opening. Ooh, that's a terrible spelling of bottom. B-O-T-T-O-M. And not 2 M's. And okay. And one more I need in there. Now I need the depth of the opening. So depth, I'm going to call this one depth, and then mine is going to be 3.5, and then I'm going to say this is front to back of opening. I'm being really specific here, describing what it is. That way, if I go to open this project up in a week or two, I can just look and see, oh, that's what I meant by height was top to bottom of the opening. Okay, that makes sense. Click OK. All right, so we've set up our parameters. Now we just need to model. It's going to be easier. If you're making your own custom display case, your obviously widths and heights were different, but you can still model along with us. You'll see why. I'm going to click here on the rectangle tool because I've already created my sketch, and I'm going to start making a rectangle. The bottom for me is going to be 6 widths wide plus 7 pieces of plywood. So here I'm going to do width, enter, times 6. So the asterisk is times. So it just made it a lot wider. And then I'm going to do plus I need to include those 7 pieces of plywood. So one for each one and then one at the end. So plus thickness times 7. That'll give me the entire width of the back. And now I'm going to click tab to get to the height. I gotta do the height now. If you accidentally push too many enters, well, let me show you what that looks like. If I was back down here and I pushed enter too many times and it drew my square for me, I didn't set this side yet, which is totally fine. Here's all you do is hit dimension, click on it, and then go out to the side and then click again to place it. And now we're going to do the height. If you hit tab while you were in there, you would have been able to do both of them before you set the rectangle. It doesn't matter either way. So on this one, the height is going to be 6 heights of my openings. So it's going to be height, enter. Okay, that was right. Height times 6 plus, I still need 7 pieces of plywood up here as well. So thickness, enter, times 7, enter, that's my height. So that is going to be the width of my back. Now I want my back to poke out the sides. I have all these little tabs to hold it into the sides and make everything nice and rigid and great. So I'm going to cut those tabs in right now. So I'm going to grab a rectangle tool and I'm going to go here on the side and I'm going to just draw a little rectangle. Anywhere on the side, doesn't really matter. I'm going to call this, I think, 2 centimeters. Tab, and I'm going to call this thickness. So you can make yours whatever you want here. For this length of a side, 2 centimeters to me sounds like a good amount, but you can play around with that number some. Now I need to center this rectangle on this line here. So I'm going to grab the midpoint tool, which is this little triangle up here in the constraints, and I'm going to click on, see how it's hard to get the right one? I want the small one. So when that happens, I'm going to click and hold. In about 2 seconds, it'll pop up with all the options. I can choose that one or that one. And I want the little one. And I want to click on the big one as well. So that put those 2 midpoints together. Now that's right in the middle of it. So now I'm going to do create. I'm going to do a rectangular pattern. Actually, before I do that, did I want to do it that way? Yeah, that works fine. I'm going to actually create another rectangle down here before I pattern it, because then I can pattern them at the same time. So here I'm going to do that same 2 centimeters wide and then thickness in this direction. Enter. Grab my midpoint tool. I'm going to line up the midpoint of the little one with the midpoint of the big one. And now I'm going to do the create rectangular pattern. And by doing it this way, let me close this door. By doing it this way, I can actually create the rectangle, the pattern for both at the same time. So it's a little bit faster. There, and there. Those 3 things I need. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose these 3 as well. 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to set my rectangular pattern. I'm going to just drag it out. I'm going to get it to where it's barely off the edge here. It doesn't matter how much off the edge. Or maybe I can get it. Nope, it's a little off the edge. So that's perfect. And now I'm going to set up. I'm going to say I don't want it. I'm dealing with these 3 up top. So I'm going to see, I want it to be symmetric in both directions. And I'm going to need way more of them. So maybe I'm going to go up to like, I don't know, 9. 9 works well. You can't use an even number. Watch what happens with an even number. When you do an even number, it puts more of them on one side than the other because we started from the middle out. So you make sure you're always using an odd number when you're starting middle out like this is. And I'm happy with that. Like that's a great amount. So I'm going to say, okay. And now you can see I've got, when I go to extrude this middle, I've already cut in the tabs. So that's what my middle piece is going to look like. I'm going to repeat the same thing, but I'm going to do it now from this side and that side. So I'm going to grab a rectangle. Anywhere on this side, I'm going to draw a rectangle in. It's going to be thickness in that dimension. Whoops. Thickness in that dimension. And then tab to get to the other side. And it's going to be 2 again there. I think that looked good. And now I'm going to say, I want to get my midpoint tool. Grab on this little one and the big one. They just got centered. And now I'll repeat the same thing on this side. I'm going to say grab, make a rectangle. That side is thickness. That one is 2. And then I'm going to use my midpoint tool to go here. Oops, I didn't grab it. So I'm going to click it again to unclick it. So now I don't have anything selected. and I'm going to try and grab the little one up here. I can't, so I'm going to hold down the left button until this little menu pops up, and now I can choose it. Okay, now I can choose the little one. I always like to choose the little one first because it's easier to see that you've got it. If you already have the big one chosen, it's hard to see the little one get bright. And now I'm going to click on the big one, and that should center it. Okay, so now what I want to do is just add in the rectangular pattern tool. So create a rectangular pattern. I need to zoom in here so I can choose my 3 things. 1, 2, and 3 sides. Zoom out, go over to the other side, zoom in, 1, 2, 3. So I should have 6 things selected, which I do. And now I'm going to find my arrows, which they should be halfway between. Oh, nope, they're right over here. And I'm going to drag my arrow up. And I'm going to zoom in wherever I'm dragging and see what's going on. I'm going to go just over, and I'm just over just like that. Perfect. And now I'm going to switch this one. So I'm working on this bottom one because I see that this number has changed down here. I'm going to switch it to symmetric. And I'm going to increase the number of this bottom one. Keep going. Remember, you got to do an odd number. That feels like pretty decent amount. I think the 2.0 was too much. So I'm going to leave it there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this 2.0 a little bit because I don't like how small these are compared to this. But if I go to 5, then I feel like this is too big compared to that. So it's somewhere in between. So I'm going to go back up to 7. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to change this 2.0 to 1.75. Enter. That looks a lot better. And this 2.0 to 1.75. Enter. You don't have to do that. I'm just making it look good in my mind. All right. So now I want to do extrude. And I'm going to extrude this middle chunk. And I'm going to extrude it 1 thickness for a piece of plywood. I'm going to tip it just to make sure it's going right. Yep, that's perfect. It's creating a new body. I'm going to say OK. Now I've got the back fully modeled. It's ready to rock and roll. So that's a lot of work done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make this right-hand side of the display case. And then we're going to copy that right-hand side and put it over here on this other side. And then we're going to create middle dividers to go all the way through. And then we'll do the same thing and work from the top down. All right. So to do this, I think the easiest way to do this is to be kind of weird. You might think of flipping it on its side here and modeling out the whole side, like down the side. But what's going to actually be easier is if we flip it, if we sketch on the face and we sketch the narrow edge of the piece of plywood and then extrude it forward and backwards to cover stuff. It's kind of a weird way to do things. So to do this, what I want to do is be able to go from draw a rectangle from like across from here, from this top corner, all the way down to this bottom inside corner. So I need to find locations for those 2 things. So I'm going to grab my line tool here, and I'm going to make it a construction line. I'm going to click here and then drag straight down and just draw a line. Right there. So that's going to be my inside edge. And now I need to find out like where this crosses the red line. So I'm going to grab another line tool and I'm going to drag from here over. And that's going to be the inside corner. And I'm using construction lines just because I want them to, what was I going to just say? I don't want them to be part of my drawing. I just want them to line stuff up for me. So life is a little easier if I do that. I can even do a few more things. I can say, hey, I'm going to do a coincidence tool, which means line the 2 things up. So I can click on this outside point and I can click on this line and it'll line that outside point up with this line. I can click on this outside point and this line, and now the corner of this little box is right where I want to be. That'd be one way to do it. Now up here, I'll show you a different technique for construction lines. You don't have to just do lines. You can do whatever shape you want. I'm going to grab a rectangle, and I want my line to line up with this outside face and with this outside face. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle, a construction line rectangle from here to here, and click here. And in one swoop, I have this outside corner identified. And because I use dashed lines, I don't have to worry about it chopping my drawing up. All right, so now I'm ready to do an actual rectangle. So I'm going to turn my construction lines off because because I want to actually draw the rectangle now. And I'm going to start here, and I'm going to drag down all the way to this inside corner, and then click. And right there, it just drew the edge of the side piece. So now I'm ready to extrude. I'm going to extrude. The only drawback of doing it this way is I've got to click on all these individual rectangles, because every tab was broken into a rectangle. There we go. I'm going to go back out to my home view, and then I'm going to extrude. And this time, I want to do two-sided extrusion. I'm going to grab this blue one to see which one it is, and it's this one right here. This is the one where I want to do depth. So I'm going to type in depth here, and that'll capture the correct depth. And on the other side, we're all doing the same thing on this side, which we want this one to be going the other direction, 2 thicknesses. So 1 thickness just to get it through. I'll show you what the 1 thickness will do. So the 1 thickness, so it's kind of hard to see. Like this right here is the front extrusion out this way. We want to get 1 thickness to get through this, and then another thickness just to kind of bring us to the back side. I'm on the right here. Let me see if I can see it better. No, the right here. There we go. Yeah, so we just extruded out the depth of the opening. Now we need to extrude backwards the thickness of a piece of plywood, plus we're going to do an extra thickness. That'll put the tabs of the back into the side and make it stronger. You'll see what I mean in a little while, but going back to home now. And so on this direction, we need to go here and do thickness, enter, th, enter, and then times 2 thicknesses. Now it thinks that we want to cut, and we don't want to cut, we want to create a new body. Make sure you switch that. If you accidentally click OK, so let's say we had it on cut and I said OK, I'm like, oh no, it just cut that off. I could do 2 things. I could Control Z, which would undo what I did and have to go back and redo it all. Or from this point, I can just go and right click on the extrusion and say Edit Feature. And I could say, now I can make a change. Oh, I want to do this as a new body instead of a cut. And now I can click OK, and now I have the side modeled in. Awesome. So that's the side piece done. We need to make the other side piece on the other side. So I'm going to go over here to bodies real quick. Let's start naming our bodies because we're going to get a bunch of them in a second. So let's name this one the back. And then this one is the R side, the right side. Now we're going to copy and move this across to the other side. To do that in Fusion, you're going to use the M button for the Move Copy command. You're going to make sure this says Bodies at the top. And then you're going to click in the middle of the body somewhere. You don't want to be on one of these dots. You want to be right here in the middle. And then you are going to drag it using this arrow, right? So I want to drag it straight back across this way to close to the edge, but not quite there yet. See, I have a little bit left to go. And I'm going to say OK. I'm going to grab my cube from this top corner and rotate it around this way. Now I'm going to use the Align button to bring it into perfect alignment. So I'm going to click Align. You want to do the thing you're going to move first. So I want to move the side, and that's the first thing, the from, and then the to is where I want to align it to. And I want to click in the middle of this gray, not on one of these dots, but in the middle of this gray, and that will line up those 2 faces. And now I can say, OK. So now I can see, go back to my home view. Oh, I didn't do copy. OK, so I'm going to Control Z. I didn't do create a copy. I'm going to do that, put it back to where it was, and I'll show you what I did wrong. M command, I'm going to click in the middle of this one. I need to create a copy. Otherwise, I'm just moving it instead of copying it and moving it. So now when I move it, you see I've made a copy of it. I'm going to click OK. Back to this top corner. I'm making lots of mistakes today. Zoom in here. I'm going to align the face of this one with the face of that one, and then click OK. And now I go back to home, and I see that I've got a left and right hand side. I'm going to change this one from R side 1 to L side because it's the left side. Awesome. So now everything looks great. I think we are ready to rock and roll. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I'll show you how to make all the intermediate vertical ones. And then we'll start with the top, work down through the middle, and go to the bottom, and then we'll be done modeling. Fantastic job, everybody. Hang in there.